Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next live stream. I'll be your producer for this session. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today. Thank you for joining.
Hi.
Hello. Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where everybody's joining us from.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Yeah, and then good evening for you, Métis. We're in similar time zones. We're a little bit over in the Americas, but this is the APAC session. So good morning to our friends joining from Australia, New Zealand, and the Asia region. This is the second part in our series on the DP-800. This one specifically is the optimize, so I think it's secure optimize and ship SQL and AI solutions. We have a little typo on the screen there, but let's go ahead and get started. My name is Mike Fortman. I'm a data engineer with SHI. You can find me on LinkedIn. I also have a very small GitHub repo that I've got out there, but I'm going to try to keep beefing that up. But I focus on data engineering topics, Python, PySpark, and Microsoft Fabric. So please feel free to look me up on LinkedIn or there. And I'm going to hand it over to Métis if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Maite Castillo Garcia from Peru. I'm a Gen AI technology architect and Microsoft Data Platform MVP. It's an honor to be here today and to share this opportunity with Mike. My LinkedIn QR code is on this slide. So I invite you to scan it and follow me so we can stay connected and share content about data and artificial intelligence.
All right. This is part of a 60 days of data days session that's been running. We're in the second month now, but there's still plenty of time left. So if you have any questions, we're going to show you a lot of different links. My favorite thing is to just look up Fabric Data Days 2026, and you'll go to a blog post that has all the links you'd ever need. But and it's probably this one right here, but let's go ahead and look through the schedule. As I mentioned, right now we are on the Secure Optimize and Ship SQL AI Solutions on July 20th. If you have not seen the first session, there are two options to go back and look at that on the Reactor, this channel. Plus next week, actually, I'm sorry, this week later, there'll be the third session for the fancy new AI stuff, which is actually the very exciting, most new feature in SQL Server 2025. Also, throughout this data days, there has been sessions on the Database World Championship. There was a session on something called the Promptathon that we'll be talking about in a little bit. There's an upcoming session on the called Data Days Hotline, where it's just going to be Q&A. So if you have any questions about Fabric Data Days, that is your opportunity to get in there and ask the experts. And something that always brings people to these sessions is free vouchers for the certification exams. Please follow this link here. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people in the chat asking questions. Thankfully, we have some great moderators that Métis will introduce later to help answer those questions. But everything you need to know, you can find at this link here. Talks about how many modules you need to watch, how many videos you need to watch, any other requirements. Also, please note that even after you make the submission, do all the right things. It might take a couple weeks to get your voucher. Those are really popular questions, so I thought I'd just try to head some of them off, but still feel free to ask and get some clarification in the chat. Another really great thing about data days, I took advantage of this in the last session to help me pass my DP-600, is I joined a study group. So again, in the right here, this link, but also in the data days, the whole entire blog post, you can find links to numerous study groups on DP-600, 700, 800. I haven't checked if there's the PL300, but the study groups are amazing. And again, I joined one. It was really helpful for me for passing my DP-600 last fall. And I'd already mentioned the SQL+AI Promptathon. This is an ongoing contest, but one thing, we've had a couple contest videos already. I want to say is, even if you don't think you're going to win a contest, these are great opportunities to get in and learn, and great opportunities to get in and meet people. So don't think that you can only join a contest if you're in the top 2 or 3, or that you've been using Fabric or SQL for years and years and years. Get in, get involved, meet people, learn something, and then maybe the next contest, you'll kind of have a better feel for how things go, and you'll be even more successful. But again, just participating is success. So I really encourage you to get involved. And as I mentioned before, we really want to point this out on July 22nd at 8 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to have a live Q&A session where you can just ask anything you want, and the people, the hosts will do their best to answer them. Also, other great opportunities to get involved and get, not just for you to learn information, but for you to give Microsoft information, and that's to join a Fabric user panel, or an IQ user panel, or a SQL user panel. All 3 links, QR codes are available there. Métis, have you participated in any user panels by chance?
No, really no, but this is the first time to participate for one panel to Fabric user panel, for example. I don't know.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I have done one. It was a great experience. I participated in one for the data warehouse, and just a few weeks later, some ideas made it. But I don't want to take any credit, because that means that they probably already had those ideas in the code and ready to go. But again, it was a great opportunity to tell Microsoft some of the things you like about a certain feature, some of the things you're maybe not as impressed with, but that they really want to get this information, they really want to learn. And also a key point we talked about in another session is, even if you're new to Fabric or IQ or SQL, they need to hear from you too, because it's not just about what the old pros need, it's also what do people need to get started. So, Fabric's a new product. SQL Server's obviously been around, but these AI features are new. So get involved in the Fabric user panel, give Microsoft your feedback, and help them make the products better. And I'm going to pass over to you, Métis, if you want to go ahead and introduce our moderators.
Thanks, Michael, for the information. It's great. Okay, before we begin, let me introduce our moderators who will support us throughout this decision. This is a live and interactive event, so feel free to share your questions and comments in the chat. Okay, first let me introduce Heidi Hastings, Microsoft Data Platform MVP and Microsoft Certified Trainer. She will be joining us, a moderator, and supporting us with questions and audience interaction throughout the session. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Michael. Okay, we also have Arwa Aldover, recognized as a Fabric super user. She will be monitoring the chat and helping us collect your questions and comments. Okay, next. Okay, great. Samsung Trust, and finally, he's a Microsoft Data Platform MVP and Fabric user super user. On this slide, you can find his social media, blog, and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow our moderators on social media. They will be supporting us throughout today's session. Okay?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. If you're in this live stream, get connected to that chat. You do need to be subscribed to the Reactor channel, but that's really easy to do. Just click a button, I think, and you're in. As my team mentioned, we've got some fantastic moderators. This is a technical session. We're going to get technical, but also I want to point out that there are probably 15, 20 hours worth of material for the DP-800 on the Microsoft Learn modules. We're covering a third of the test, and we're doing it in an hour. So we're not going to get into every detail by any means, but you have the moderators, and this is a great opportunity if you have some questions to go ahead and get involved in the chat and give them your best questions, and I'll bet you'll get some great answers. So our focus is going to be on implementing data security and compliance, optimizing database performance. Maiti's going to cover both those in a few minutes. Then I'm going to get back and cover implementing CI/CD with database projects and integrating SQL solutions with Azure services. As we mentioned, we're not going to get into all the detail, but you should have to take this test, some familiarity with Microsoft SQL Server or Azure SQL or SQL databases in Microsoft Fabric. There are some differences, very few, so it's worth knowing some of the differences, but as long as you've got some experience with any one of those platforms, you're off to a good start. You should understand basic T-SQL, the fundamentals of designing relational and semi-structured data models. You're going to need to understand a little bit about CI/CD and GitHub. And because this is the new SQL Server 2025 with all the new AI features built in, you'll need to understand some of those new AI features as well. We could just skip through the roles here, but you'll learn or need to be able to demonstrate that you can build a scalable database solution, integrate the new AI features, optimize and deploy your database, and work with app developers, DBAs, and architects. Again, the Fabric DP-800 exam is broken into 3 primary sections. 35 to 40% is the topic that was covered last week. Again, if you missed it, just go ahead and watch Look in Reactor. You can find one of 2 sessions from last week. We're going to focus on the middle section on the data security and compliance. And then later this week, again, will be the AI capabilities sessions. There's 2 of those available as well. And with that said, this is just a summary again of what we've covered. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Maiti to take us through implementing data security and compliance.
Yes. Today, talk to some difference to SQL+AI in DP-800. Okay. Okay. Return. Yes. Okay. In the first module, we will explore how to protect sensitive data in SQL using encryption, masking, access control, and auditing, while also ensuring compliance with security requirements. Okay. Right. Next slide.
Oh no. Sorry. This is my technical.
Don't worry. Okay.
First slide.
Yes. Okay. In this slide, we review a topic directly related to the DP-800 domain, protecting, optimizing, and implementing database solutions. Design and selecting the appropriate encryption strategy between always encrypted and column-level encryption. The exam doesn't only require us to understand these technologies, but also to choose the right option based on the trust boundary, the requirement operations, the type of information that must be protected. First, we have always encrypted. In this approach, the application driver encrypts the data before sending it to SQL Server and decrypts it when the results are returned. This means the database engine stores processes encrypted values while the encryption keys remain outside the database environment. This operation helps prevent database administrators, system administrators, or cloud operators from accessing sensitive information such as identification number, credit card details, healthcare records, or inclusive financial data. Always encryptor use a column master key, which protects the encryption keys as an column encryption key, which encrypts the actual column values. With the deterministic encryption, the same value produces the same encrypted result, allowing exact match searches, equality comparisons, grouping, and indexing inclusive. Randomized encryption provides a stronger protection because equals values generate different encrypted results, but it significantly limits the operation that can be performed where search, comparisons, or pattern matching are required. Always encrypted with secure enclaves can process the data temporarily inside a protected memory environment. On the right, we have a column level encryption. In this case, encryption and decryption are performed inside the SQL Server engine using symmetric keys, certificates, and TSQL functions such as encrypt by key and decrypt by key. This approach is useful when the server is trusted in the main objective is to protect specific columns while the data is stored. The key difference is that the SQL server engine may access the information in plain text during processing. So from DP-800 perspective, the main decision is to identify the trust boundary. We choose always encrypted when neither the server nor this administrator should be able to access sensitive values. We choose column level encryption when we trust the SQL Server environment and need solution that is more directly integrated with TSQL. We must also evaluate the queries requirement by the application because a stronger encryption can strengthen searches, searching, grouping, indexing, and integrations with other database features. Okay. Okay. In this slide, I have a questions for you, Michael.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What layer do you use in the work? I don't know.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Okay. What layer? What
Yes.
layer in this graphic? What layer do you use in the work? I don't know.
So for most of us SQL stuff, the fact that the database is completely encrypted is good. I've never worked in an environment where we needed to protect the data from the DBAs. So like that always encrypted client side, that's not been anything in my experience, but certainly have always relied on the fact that the data at rest is encrypted.
Great. Okay, we can see the different encryption layers that can be combined to protect a SQL solution. Okay, the key is to understand what each technology protects and select the right one based on risk, trust level, and application behavior. The first layer is transparent data encryptions or TDE. TDE encrypts the cyclical database files and transactions logs, protecting data at rest. It works transparently for applications, but it doesn't prevent an authorized user from querying and viewing the data in plain text through SQL. Second layer is column level encryption. Here we protect only specific files, such as credit card numbers, identification numbers, or financial information. Encryption and decryption are performed inside the database engine using keys, certificates, and TSQL functions. At the top layer, we have talked to always encrypted. No, encryption takes place on the client side, and the main keys are stored outside the database. As a result, even server administration can manage the platform without having access to the sensitive information. This option provides a stricter trust boundary. Also, it also requires us to consider operations and queries that the application needs to perform. The main idea for the exam is that these layers don't necessarily compete with each other. We can use TE to protect the entire database at rest, color level encryption for specific files, always encrypted when we need to protect data even from highly privileged user. The decision should be based on the threat model, trust boundary, and functional requirements of the solution. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this slide is more short. Here slide review two mechanisms that help control what information each user can view or modify without changing the underlying story, that dynamic data masking and row level security. First, we have dynamic data masking or DDM. This feature partially hides sensitive values when they are displayed in a query. For example, an email address can appear. Let's look at this in the picture. A number can be replaced with a random value, and an identification number can display only a few characters. It's important to remember that DDM doesn't encrypt or modify the actual data. It only changes how the information is displayed to user who are not authorized to see the complete value. Users with unmasked permission, certain privilege, user can still access the original data. For this reason, DDM is useful for reducing data exposure in development support or customer service environment. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, I'm so sorry. In the other slide, I have one question more, Michael.
Yep, I'll go back.
Return, yes. Okay. Mike, in which scenario would you use DDM, and in which scenario would you use RLS? For example, I don't know.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so RLS truly keeps people from seeing data they are not supposed to have. So maybe if you have a company that has multiple branch offices, like like an East office and a West office, you would use I would use RLS to keep the people in the East only seeing data for their region, and the people in the West only seeing data for their region. And you also made a great point about dynamic data masking. It's not security. If you have a table that has salaries in it, for instance, you might run a query and then get a random number for what everybody's salary is. But if you run a query and say, show me everybody that makes more than $50,000, it will tell you. And if you say, show me everybody makes more than $100,000, it will tell you. So don't use dynamic data masking for something that you don't want people to just, kind of take guesses and figure out, because it's great for a front-end application, but it is not great for some place where people can query the data. directly. So I'm really careful when I use a DDM, but row-level security, we use that all the time. My role is more as a data analyst.
Yes, the main idea for the exam is to understand that these features solve different problems and can work together. No? Yes, it's a good example. Okay, now next slide. Thanks. Okay, okay. We review how to implement secure access. Object level permissions and important topic within exam. The main idea is to apply the principle of least privilege, which means granting only the permissions each user, application, or service needs to perform its role. In SQL, we can manage permissions using grant, any, and revoke at different levels: server, database, schema, and object. For example, we can allow a role to query all tables within a schema or allow application to execute only one specific store procedure. We should also remember that adding permissions take precedent over a grant. A good practice is to assign permissions through database roles instead of granting them directly to individual user. We can use fixed roles such as, I don't know, DB data reader or DB data writer, or create custom roles when we need more granular control. This simplifies administrations and reduces the risk of excessive access. On the right, we can see modern secure access mechanism with Microsoft Entra ID. We can use passwordless authentication instead of storing passport in connections string. For service-to-service communication, we can use managed identity, which avoids storing secrets or credentials directly in the code. This is also relevant for SQL solutions that integrate AI. When SQL needs to connect to AI model endpoint or to REST, GraphQL, I'm so sorry, or MCP APIs, the connection must be protected through authentication, authorization, and auditing. Okay, next slide, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to mention, Matthew mentioned, deny always wins over grant.
Mm-hmm.
Two things. We want you to learn SQL. We also want you to pass this exam. So look at that, things like that. Those are great tips that Matthew gave you. And also the principle about granting minimum permissions. I don't know how many Microsoft certifications I've taken, but least privilege seems like it always comes up. So the principle of least privilege. So those were two really good points that you made there, Matthew. Thanks for sharing that.
Don't worry, here we bring you the best tips.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we review auditing and compliance, an important topic within the exam because SQL solution must not only protect the data, but also record who accesses it, that operation was performed, and when it occurred. First, we have a SQL Server audit, which allow us to create audits at both the server and database levels. We can capture events such as login change, batch execution, and access to schema objects. These records can be stored in files or the event log. Okay, and they can also be combined with extended events when we need more detailed technical diagnostics. In Azure SQL environments, auditing is building. Audit events can be sent to services such as blob storage or log analytics for centralized review. retention, and analytics. Okay, depending on the configuration, we can capture DML and DDL operation, detect anomalous access patterns, complement monitoring with Windows Defender for SQL. The first section focus on compliance features, data classification, health identify and label sensitive columns, vulnerability assessment, health detect insecure configurations, and Azure policy can enforce auditing standards consistently. This evidence can be used to support compliance with regulations and frameworks such as GDPR, HIPAA, or SOC2. Okay, one idea from DP-800 perspective, the key is to decide which events should be audited, where the logs will be stored, how long they should be retained, and who they will be used to investigate incidents or demonstrate compliance. Auditing doesn't replace security controls, but it provides traceability and evidence of what happens within the SQL solution. Okay, next slide. Okay, Mike, which security control do you think is most often confused in DP-800 in the exam?
Yeah, no, about most often confused, but again, the one I've seen less often is the client side, or the basically like protecting the DBA from the data. I'm sure it's needed. I'm sure there are purposes. That's just not one that I've had direct access to. So that's the great thing about an exam like this. It shows you the whole product, even the stuff that you don't use. And in my case, that would be an area where I don't have a lot of experience.
Okay, maybe, I don't know, the public to say. Now, let's summarize how to choose the right security control based on each requirement from DP-800 perspective. So the key is to first identify what we need to protect from whom. When we need to prevent even the database administrators from viewing information in plain text, we should use always encrypted, because the encrypted takes place on the client side and the keys remain outside the database. If we only need to encrypt a specific columns and we trust the server, we can use column level encryption with functions such as encrypt by key to hide sensitive values from certain user. We use dynamic data masking, remembering that it only changes who the data is displayed and doesn't encrypt the underlying value. When each user should only be able to query their own routes, we apply row level security. If the requirement is to control who can query tables or execute the stored procedures, we use object level permissions, throw, grant, linear, and revoke. Important point to the exam, it's not confuse masking with an encryption. If the scenario states that the database administrator must not see data plain text, the correct answer in always a scripter, not dynamic data masking, for example. Okay. Next, yes. Next slide. Thanks, Michael. Okay, so now talk to module 2. In this second module, we will focus on database performance optimization from the exam. And we will review service tiers, currency, installation levels, execution plans, and query sort to improve query performance and maintain and stable workflows. Okay. Okay. Now, in this slide, we compare the main Azure SQL Database Service tiers and pricing models. General purpose is designed for most standard business workloads. It separates compute from remote storage and provides a balanced option for applications that do not require extremely low latency. Business critical use local SSD storage and built-in read replicas providing lower latency and highest IS/O performance. It's the preferred options for mission critical OLTP workloads and scenarios that require features such as in-memory OLTP. Hyperscale use distributed architecture and is designed for very large and rapidly growing database. It supports fast backups and multiple read replicas, making it suitable for large and elastic workloads. Serverless automatically scales compute resource and can pause during inactive periods. It is good option for intermittent or unpredictable workloads because the customer pays according to the compute consumed. Finally, we must distinguish between the DTU model and the big core model. DTUs combine CPU memory and into a predefined package, while the big core model provides more granular control over compute, memory, and storage. This is important for the exam. It's a skill very important. Not memorizing every limit, but choosing the correct tier, purchasing model based on workload behavior and business requirements. Okay. Next slide. Okay. Okay. This slide is transaction isolations, levels, and concurrency, which are directly related to the DP-800 objective of preserving data consistency while maintaining database performance. The main decision is to balance a stronger isolation against to the amount of blocking resource consumption introduced by the workload. Okay, read and committed provides the highest concurrencies and minimal locking, but it allows dirty reads, non-repeatable reads, phantom rows. Read commit, the traditional default in SQL servers prevents dirty reads, ultra may change, or new rows may appear between statements in the same transaction. Okay, repeat read keeps the rows already read stable for the duration of the transaction, but new matching rows can still appear. So Resable provides the strongest look and basis consistency by preventing dirty reads. No repeatable reads, phantom rows. However, it can also introduce greatest level of blocking and reduce concurrency. Okay, this point is that Important that Azure SQL Database enables RCSI by default, while SQL servers typically use log-based read command unless row versioning improvise concurrency, but it also requires monitoring the version store long-running transactions. Therefore, the correct isolation level depends on the consistency requirements, transaction duration, contention patterns, expected workloads throughput. Okay.
Just real quick, Meti, it's been said a couple times in the chat. This is one of those screens that you should definitely take a screenshot and spend some time memorizing, because again, these are good things to know, and these are also great questions that you're going to probably find on the DP-800 exam. So this is, again, some great information.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Now, execution plans and dynamic management views. Two important tools for analyzing and optimizing query performance in the exam. The goal is to identify why a query is slow before making change to indexes, code, or database resource. In the guide to exam specifically includes evaluating query performance through
I'm sorry about
execution
that.
plans, DMVs. No problem. An estimated execution plan shows the strategy selected to be the query optimized without executing the query. It includes estimate row counts, operators, and cost. An actual execution plan is generated after execution and includes runtime information, allowing us to compare estimate and actual rows and identify cardinality estimation problems. Some operators require special attention. Okay, a table or index scan may indicate that SQL server must be read a large amount of data. Although a scan is not always a problem. Frequent key lookups may suggest the index doesn't contain all the required columns. Source field can indicate insufficient memory grant, while implicit conversions may prevent efficient index 6 when the compared data types do not match. So this skill is important to combine both sources of information, use DMVs to locate the expensive or workload, and then analyze the execution plan to understand root case. We should validate the evidence before creating indexes or changing queries, because DMV statics may be a temporary optimizer recommendations are not automatically the best solutions. Okay, next slide, Michael. Okay, so okay, one more slide later. Okay, query store and query performance insight. Two tools include in the exam objective of evaluating and optimizing query performance. Their main advantage is that they provide historical information, allowing us understand how query behavior changes over time. Okay, query store ultimately captures query text execution plans inside the database, because it maintains a story of the plans used by each query. Now we can identify performance regression, for example. When a previous plan provides better performance, we can force now good plan by using SP store procedure query store force plan. Okay, query store also provides query level weight statics report for regressed queries, automatic tuning capabilities, and policies to control which queries. Okay, and next next slide and last slide. Slide 5. Here, view blocking and deadlocks, two currency problems that can reduce application throughput and are relevant to the exam. Blocking occurs when one system holds a lock on a resource and another system must wait before it can continue. We can identify blocking by using sys dot DM as a request to check or the blocking sessions ID or sys dot DM from logs or review active logs, and tools such as Activity Motor for quick view of blocking chains. To reduce blocking, we should be keep transactions short, create appropriate indexes, queries finish faster, and consider read committed snapshot to reduce read writer blocking. This block is different. It occurs when two more transactions each hold a resource that the other transaction needs. Okay, for finish, we can diagnose deadlocks through standard events, especially system health session, which captures deadlock graphs. These graphs show the affect processes, locked resource, and select victim. Okay, the key is to distinguish the two scenarios. Blocking involves waiting may eventually complete, and while a deadlock creates cycle that force SQL Server to determine what one transaction. Okay, this is the finish my part, and module 4. Continue, Michael, please.
Great. Yeah. All right. Well, very nice job. There is a question in the chat, Métis, about it's asking from your experience, what's the most common mistake teams make when troubleshooting blocking and deadlocks? You can try to answer that real quick, or you can write into the chat if you have that open as well.
Oh, okay. Your common error. Common error using SQL. Michael?
Yes. Yep. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and jump in here with our third module. We've got 2 more to go. They're a little bit shorter, so I think we're really good on time. The first one is about implementing continuous integration, continuous deployment, CI/CD with SQL Database Projects. So just covering this in a really high level, but the Learn modules are fantastic. So again, if you're getting prepared for this exam, go through the Learn modules. One of the key things that makes all this, I don't want to call it magic, but I just said it, work is something called a DACPAC. What this is you can use VS Code, Visual Studio Code, but maybe even SSMS to build basically a file or a file structure that has all your objects in your database, not your data, but all your table definitions, your view definitions, your store procedure definitions, index definitions, everything that describes your database can be stored into what they call a DACPAC. And then when you go to deploy this to your production or to a test server, what it does is it will look at this the feature called SQL Project or SQL Proj. It looks at the definition of your live database. It looks at the definition in the DACPAC, and then it decides there are 3 changes. For example, there are 2 new columns and 1 new index. Instead of rewriting the entire database, it will generate the 2 alter table add column statements and the add index statement. So again, this is a great thing about the DACPAC is you just have one definition. The system existing system is another definition, and the DACPAC, the deployment process will just look for the differences and generate a file specifically to apply those differences without having to go through the entire database. It's really important to also use source control. So that's just, there was some conversation earlier in the chat. I know that on DP-700 they talked about source control. I don't remember on the 600, but it's definitely covered on the 700 and 800. So if you don't have any familiarity with either Azure DevOps or Git, you'll need some familiarity with both of those products. And again, both are covered quite well in the DP-800 exam. And also down below, this last section is about schema drift detection. Maybe you've got a database in production and you've got a good copy of it in development and you've made some changes and everything's going great. But what you don't know is that Tuesday night at 3 a.m, your database administrator had to put in an emergency fix, and maybe they added an index, and you don't know that. So the schema drift detection feature lets you say, before you deploy this, not only do you want to make sure that maybe you got the 2 new columns in the index that you added as part of your development, but you also want to make sure that nothing that happened in production gets overwritten. So if the DBA had to put in an index in the middle of the night on Tuesday, you don't want to release your new version and knock that index out, or he's going to be up again at 2 a.m. tomorrow night and not very happy with you. So schema drift detection is a great option to see not only like what's going to change with my changes, but also is there anything that happened to the live database that I didn't get informed about, and then you can go put that into your system before pushing that back up into production. Also, whether you're using GitHub or Azure DevOps, both are options. You have the option, you have the ability to build, validate, and actually run tests. You can automate tests. So if you have things where you know that you expect a certain value, maybe for this total sales for third quarter of 2023, you can check that. You can also test things to make sure that stored procedures that you have written can handle valid input. All these things are available, again, either with GitHub Actions or in Azure DevOps. Again, both covered very well in the Learn materials. You can also, as this mentions here, spin up a database. You can do pre-scripts and post or after the fact scripts. So if you've got some data that needs to be loaded, perhaps you have some lookup tables that need data populated in them. These are all available in the scripting part of Azure DevOps or GitHub. And the last thing we're going to cover in regard to this exam is the Data API Builder, or DAB, you'll see it referred to. This is not something that I use anymore in my day-to-day job. I was a DBA years ago, a database developer, application developer years ago. Not to say how many years ago, because I always say how long I've been around. Pam likes to pick on me about that. But in those days, this was a lot of work to build an interface between my application and my database. Microsoft has put together something called the Database API Builder. And essentially, there is one file that you need to configure. This one file. It's a JSON file. I don't know if it's on the screen what it's called, but again, it's in the materials. But you configure this file, and it will create a REST API endpoint and a graph endpoint so that you can connect to your database using this. You just do the definitions. You tell it what tables you have. You tell it who should see what tables, who should see what views. You can even configure stored procedures to be available for people to run or execute through the Data API Builder. So again, and as it's mentioned here, this isn't just something for SQL Server. It works on Azure SQL, works on Cosmos DB, MySQL, and Postgres. So again, what Microsoft has done is taken just tons of manual work, especially supporting all these different environments, all these different databases, over static web apps, over Azure containers, over the app service, and they've boiled it all down to one JSON file. that if you configure this file, it will generate the API for a REST or for the graph across all these different databases, across all these different environments. One file. It's an amazing feature. Again, it's on the test. It's not. You're not going to get super deep into those details, but you definitely need to understand what the purpose of that data API builder is and how you can configure it. Also key, again, just looking at the slide here, this section over here on the right about the event-driven change patterns, that is very important. I can't tell you what questions are on the test. It's been a while since I took it. I don't remember exactly, but this stuff is key. You need to understand the difference between change data capture, which is your more traditional SQL Server change tracking, looking at what values have changed row and column, in the data. But also there's something just called regular change tracking, which is more of a lightweight. It doesn't necessarily tell you what changed. It just tells you this record has been updated so that you can keep track. And then there is one more, and it's not on the slide, at least I'm not seeing it, the change event capture, I think, CEC. And this one is basically kind of like, think of it more like real time. Instead of pulling the database, this is one where you can just generate a stream of changes to your database. You can move this into some Azure functions. You can put this into a KQL database. So if you really need to track stuff in real time, I think it's the change event capture versus the change tracking or the change data capture. Again, all these things are important, and you're going to see this stuff on the exam, and it's definitely worth understanding. Again, I think the great part about the exams, even for the features I don't use, is just to know what features are there, because maybe there's a feature I need, and I'm going to just do something I was doing 10 years ago, do it the hard way, build a REST API for my database, only to find out that if I had just used the data API builder, Microsoft basically handed it to me. So again, that's one of my favorite things about the exams is seeing some of the new features that I might not come across in my day-to-day work. We're getting close to the end here, just wrapping up. This is a summary of some of the things that Métis and I both talked about. One thing I didn't mention in CI/CD, it's here, and I should have mentioned it, and Métis also mentioned it. Do not put any passwords or credentials or secrets in your code. That stuff will get into your repository in your GitHub or your Azure DevOps, and people that should have no business seeing your passwords or your secrets are going to see those. So that is a key. We mentioned least privilege. That is a key on any Microsoft exam. You're going to see least privilege. I promise, practically. So Métis, I don't know if there's any thing here you want to call out again, just as something you might have mentioned earlier that needs to be repeated one more time.
Yes, the Data API builder generates secure REST and GraphQL endpoints from your database schema is an important point to the exam. And Azure Monitors DC and Azure Function SQL Trigger. Look at this, very good. the guide to study, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're getting close to time. So we're going to wrap up here, but just reiterate, there is nothing better for getting prepared for these exams, in my opinion, than the Learn modules. It takes you through every topic that's going to be on the exam. They all have practice questions at the end of each module. They're excellent questions. And I do think, I have not checked it myself, but I've been told that the practice exam for the DP-800, it was not available at the beginning, but I think it's there now. So you can take a practice assessment and get a good feel for how prepared you are, and either schedule that exam or go read Jeff Shoemaker's study guide and dig in a little deeper. Any last thoughts, Métis?
Yes, I use the Learning Path to certifications in general. Get as much hands-on practice as possible, explore the available preparation resource, and take the practice assessment when it's available. Finally, when you feel ready, schedule your exam. You can scan the QR code to access all the official preparation to resource. And good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck. Great opportunity. Free exams. I've seen a lot of people in the chat asking about all the requirements. Just watch the videos, do the modules. It says you have to do 3 to get the cert or get the voucher. I do them all. You want to pass. Don't throw away that perfectly good voucher by not taking the time to prepare. So with that, I think
I
just want
answer the questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Next is the slide, please, Michael.
Yes.
For the finish. Next slide. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, great.
Yep.
And with that, we come to the end of today's sessions. I hope this overview gives you clearer understanding of the key topics covered in the DP-800 exam and helps you feel more confident on your certification journey. Okay, thank you all for joining us today, for your participation, and for all your great questions. It was a pleasure sharing this session with you, Mike.
I enjoyed it myself. Thank you.
And we wish you the very best on your DP-800 exam. See you at the next Microsoft Reactor event. Okay, Michael.
All right.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We highly appreciate the incredibly engaged chat. So thank you as well to all of our moderators that were so attentive, and of course, our amazing presenters. This session will be recorded, and you are going to be able to go back and rewatch if there's anything you might want to review or just check out for a second time. This will be available using this same link, or you can just enter the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. With that being said, thank you, everyone. We do have a QR code right here on the screen. If you could please take a couple of minutes from your time to answer the survey and give us your feedback about today's session. I also dropped a link in the chat if you want to click on it. But with that being said, thank you so much. My name is Isabel from the Reactor, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye, everyone.